Hello class, we are in chapter 7.6. We are in our last section in this chapter. So just a quick reminder that we are going to have a test coming up next week. So make sure you do study chapter number 7. I'm going to have a Quizlet open for you so you can study during the weekend as well. So we are in chapter 7.6, Into the Wild Blue Yonder. We did learn about the different layers of our sun. We did learn about the different layers of Earth. Today we're going to learn about the different layers in our atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere also has different layers, and every single layer of our atmosphere has a different role. Just because this doesn't happen in this layer doesn't mean that it's not important, but every single layer has its own purpose. When God created all those layers of the atmosphere, He actually had a plan for each single layer. So let's go and learn about the different layers of our atmosphere. Our first layer of the atmosphere is going to be known as the troposphere. Now, what happens in our troposphere? The troposphere is actually the layer of the atmosphere closest to the Earth. And what happens is that the water vapor will mix with the air molecules of the troposphere. Since the water vapor will mix with the air molecules, this certain layer is actually known as the home of the weather. Most of the weather will happen in this certain layer. And the reason why most of the weather will happen in this layer is because 99% of water that can be found in the atmosphere is actually in the troposphere. That's why most of the clouds are located in the troposphere, and that's why it's also known as the home of the weather. So you can see the role of the troposphere is what? It's weather. Okay? It's weather. But moving on to our next layer, we have the stratosphere. Now, what happens in the stratosphere? The stratosphere is the layer above the troposphere. And one thing that we do have to know is that clouds do not form in this region. The reason why is because there's almost no water vapor. We do know that clouds are formed with water vapor, but since you cannot find water vapor in this region, you're not going to find clouds. The reason why is because 99% of the water is found in the troposphere. Now, what can we find in this layer then? We can find something known as the ozone layer. The ozone layer is the invisible shield of gas in the stratosphere. What will this invisible shield help us with? This way it will protect us from UV rays. So we did learn about the infrared light, and we did learn about the UV light, and we did learn that the UV light is the one that causes damage. So the ozone layer will protect us from the UV rays. Now, what is ozone? What is the definition of ozone? Ozone is a form of oxygen with 3 atoms of oxygen in its molecule. So in one molecule, we can find 3 atoms of oxygen. So in the stratosphere, we can find something known as the ozone layer, which is an invisible shield of gas. Just because there is no water vapor doesn't mean that there is no role in this certain layer. So as I said, every single layer of the atmosphere has a different role, has a different purpose, and the purpose of the stratosphere is protecting us from the UV rays. Now let's go and learn about what is the purpose of our next layer, which is also known as the mesosphere. The mesosphere is a very cold layer of air above the stratosphere. One thing is that the mesosphere is about negative 100 degrees Celsius. If you are wondering what is negative 100 degrees Celsius, we did learn how to change Celsius to Fahrenheit in math. So you can go ahead and change that to Fahrenheit to see what is the temperature in Fahrenheit. But the mesosphere is about negative 100 degrees Celsius. But moving on, the mesosphere will help us protect the Earth from being constantly bombarded by objects from outer space. So we do know from outer space, what do we get? We get what? Meteors. We get meteoroids. And what's going to protect us from all that stuff is going to be the mesosphere. So one thing that we do have to note is that the difference between meteoroids and meteors. Meteoroids are the friction in the atmosphere which will cause the meteoroids to burn up. So the meteoroids are the ones that will come from outer space. Now meteors are known as the burning meteoroids when they actually come to the mesosphere and they burn up. We do have to know the difference. So meteoroids, the friction in the atmosphere will cause the meteoroids to burn up, and the meteors are also known as shooting stars, the burning meteoroids. So know that difference. As you can see, the troposphere is known as the home of the weather. We have the stratosphere, which we can find the ozone layer, which is an invisible shield which will protect us from UV rays. And then we have the mesosphere, which will help us to protect the Earth from being constantly bombarded by objects from outer space. So every single layer has its own purpose. Now let's go learn about our next one. We have the thermosphere and the exosphere. Those are the last two layers of our atmosphere. Those are the two layers above the mesosphere. What will happen is that in this layer of the atmosphere, air is very rare. Very few air can be found in this certain layer. Now, what happens in this layer though? Something known as air glow. Air glow is a strange light in the horizon on a moonless night. What will cause an air glow is going to be ions. So because of ions cause air glow, the lower region of the thermosphere is often called the ionosphere. We do have to know that name. So another name for thermosphere is going to be the ionosphere because of the air glow. What causes the air glow is going to be the ions. Now moving on though, one of the reasons why we can live here in the Earth is because of our magnetic field. So Earth has a magnetic field with a north magnetic pole and a south magnetic pole. What will happen is in this certain magnetic field, we can find the solar wind, which is a subatomic particle from the sun that speeds through space at 1 million miles an hour. Now, why can we find solar wind in the magnetic field? Is because the solar wind will be hitting our magnetic field. One thing that we do have to know is that the solar wind is actually very, very dangerous. As you can see, it says that it's particles from the sun that are coming through space at 1 million miles per hour, but our magnetic field is protecting us from the solar wind. So it says that the Earth's magnetic field defends the Earth against these particles, which are very, very harmful to living things. One of the reasons why we can actually live here on Earth is because our magnetic field is protecting us from the solar wind. Now, what will cause the air molecules and the solar wind when they actually collide to each other? So when they actually collide, what will happen is auroras will actually happen. So we have the aurora, which is a light display caused by collision between the air molecules and the solar wind. We do have to know that there is a northern light and we have the southern light. The northern light is also known as the aurora borealis. Aurora borealis is known as the northern light, and the southern light is also known as the aurora australis. So aurora borealis and we have the aurora australis. So we have the northern light and the southern light. So this is caused because of what? Because of the collision between the air molecules and the solar wind. So this is chapter 7.6. It's our last section in this chapter. What you're going to do for today's classwork is you're going to read chapter 7.6. You're going to do the chapter checkup in, not the chapter checkup, the comprehension check in page 199. Just a quick reminder that you do have a test coming up next week, so make sure you do study chapter number 7, and I'm gonna have a Quizlet up for you so you can study with my Quizlet as well. Goodbye.